today is my anniversary, so I'm really excited to carve out a little time to spend with you all. But I wanted to just kind of start off with a little bit about me. I am a Class 2 Kauffman Scholar. I feel really old now because I know that we have a lot of classes after me, but just excited to be able to connect with some of the other classes. I actually started in nonprofit work, so I attended Howard University like Autumn, and I also attended University of Missouri, Kansas City. I started in nonprofit after I graduated from college, and I had this like aha moment when I was working in nonprofit. I was actually leading a board meeting, and in the board meeting, I was begging these board folks for some money for an activity with our kids. And I just remember thinking like, wow, money really can make a difference and an impact when it comes to chasing your dreams and being able to provide for yourself. And if you're going to be on the giving or the receiving side of donations and charity. And so I really wanted to empower people to be on the giving side versus, having to ask other people to help you with your dreams. And so that was kind of like my aha moment. And I started working in finance. I'm currently at American Century Investments. I have 3 investment licenses. I'm working on my 4th currently. And then, my main jobs include trading mutual funds. I'm also the internship coordinator for American Century. So if you know some interns, don't have to be finance related, send them my way. I'm excited to be helping out with the internship. And then I also manage a team of 12 there. So that's enough about me. Let's talk about finances, right? So I want you to utilize your chat function. Okay, so go ahead and type the answer into this question. But why is it important to talk about finances, right? Why are you here? What drew you to a workshop on a Wednesday at 5 o'clock to talk about money and finances? And then Autumn, if you want to share some of the responses that you're getting once folks have some time. And while you all are typing that, I think it's just important to think about the why, right? So I'm asking you why because to me, the most important question whenever you're doing anything is to understand and to start with your why.
So we have set future up for success.
Okay.
It's from Taj, financial freedom. Amen to that.
Love it.
To be financially secure, not worry about money and focus on more important things. And to save it correctly.
Awesome. Well, all of those are really awesome reasons. And I think that, you can really boil it down to a few things, right? Why do we save? Why do we budget? Why do we talk about money? Well, we have short-term goals, right? Short-term goals could be like, you want to save for a vacation, or maybe you want to buy something really nice for yourself, right? Treat yourself. If you want to treat yourself, you might have to save for that. We also talk about midterm goals, right? Maybe that's purchasing a home or buying a new car. Whatever those midterm goals are, those can turn into long-term goals. Long-term goals could be, I don't know anybody who wants to work for the rest of their life, right? Does anybody want to work for the rest of their life? No, right? I don't either. And so that's a fancy way of saying retirement, right? When do you get the choice to say, I'm not going to punch a clock every day. I'm going to be able to live off of what I've saved so that I can choose to spend my time however I want to spend my time. If you want to work, that's great, but not having to work. That's important. So all of these things just boil down to financial security. And that's what you all, all of those things that you mentioned and that Autumn said, all boils down to financial security. So how do we get financial security? Well, it starts with budgeting. And so if we want to talk about financial security, we have to understand what our current financial state is and how we can grow from that. So I want everyone to take a second and pull up this budgeting worksheet that you should have received when you registered for the workshop. If you don't have access to a computer, I would recommend that you grab a piece of paper and a pencil and a calculator, and we're actually going to walk through the budgeting worksheet together. If you have questions, you can ask Autumn. You can put it in the chat, and then Autumn will let me know what your questions are. So I'm going to give everybody about 30 seconds to get that pulled up, or to grab, a pencil and some paper. This is going to be interactive, right? Because this is all about your personal finance. So I want us to walk away with some real tangible numbers and some things to think about, and not just, listen to me talk, because no one wants to just listen to me talk all the time. Okay. So if everyone has had a chance to pull up that monthly budget, we're going to walk through each of these areas. And I want you, if you haven't already done so, I want you to type in your number. So keep in mind that we want to focus on monthly numbers, not annual or quarterly numbers. It's really important that we only input monthly numbers, so that when we get to the calculation, it comes out right. So let's start here. So if you are out on your own, or you're paying mortgage or rent, you're going to want to go ahead and input that number here. And I'm just going to, just for the sake of doing this, I'm going to just enter in random numbers, okay? So let's say, I have a roommate, my rent is $500. I don't have any property taxes because I'm renting. The scenario here is that I'm renting. So no home maintenance. Maybe you have some homeowners or some renters insurance. You'll want to put that in there, what you pay on a monthly basis, and then utilities. So think about, what do you average in electric, gas, water, and any other utilities you pay for? So if I think about, okay, my KCP&L bill is usually around, if I'm averaging, let's say $200, then I've got gas and water. So let's just put $250 for the total there. Now, make sure you're putting in your numbers. You can always go back and adjust these numbers once you have the numbers in front of you, the real numbers. And then if there's anything else related to housing, you can actually input that here. So I'm just going to pretend like I have a trash bill. And so I can actually enter in trash here. And then I can say, okay, that's $10 a month. All right. So now we're going to move down to transportation. So thinking about your car payment, this person has a $300 car payment. And then think about insurance. So let's say we're going to get this correct here. So let's say it's $100 for insurance. And then when you come to the gas category, think about how many times you fill up your gas tank a month. So I would say, I fill up my gas tank maybe once every 2 weeks, and it takes about $30. So once every 2 weeks, so twice a month, $30. So I'm going to go ahead and input $60 there. Again, it's okay to start with estimates. You can always back into the real numbers. If you do estimate on the higher side versus the lower side. You don't want to, don't play yourself, is how we say it in the finance world. Don't play yourself. Okay, so then if there's anything else here, maintenance, parking, maybe you live in an apartment building and you have to pay for parking, go ahead and add that in. Now for personal loans, so this is a big one, right? Thank you, Kauffman. I have no student loans. Shout out to, all the Kauffman Scholars out there. Maybe you have a few student loans. Maybe you went on and you got your master's degree, or you got a different, another degree. Congrats to you. Go ahead and put your monthly payment here. So not your total amount of student loans. So maybe let's say you owe $20,000 in student loans and you pay $80 a month. You're going to want to put $80 here, not the total. And then think about the credit cards that you have. If you have credit cards, you want to put here the minimum monthly payment. Now, I know you're probably like, okay, but I pay more than the monthly payment. I get it. but we're gonna put that in a different spot. So for now, if you have 3 credit cards, and let's say each of them, the minimum that you have to pay, and you can find that on your statements, the minimum you have to pay is $25 on each. Go ahead and put $75 there as the example, $25 for each. I'm going to give you all just a couple seconds here to get caught up in case anyone is still inputting numbers. Really, really important to know what all of your minimum monthly payments are on your credit cards. And the reason being is because when you think about some of these midterm and long-term goals, a lot of them will require you to get a loan. And in order to get a favorable loan, a loan with a lower interest rate, you want to make sure that your credit is looking great, because that's going to save you money in the long run. So hopefully you all have had enough time to think about all of your credit cards and all of the minimum monthly payments, add those together and put them there. Now, if you have any other type of loans, like personal loans, you can put those here. So let's say you had a PayPal and you don't want to include that in the credit card, and maybe, you know, PayPal gives out loans now. So you think about, okay, I have a PayPal loan and that is $30 a month. You want to add that in this category. Let's move over to health insurance. So for health insurance, if you get health insurance through your job, I don't want you to put anything here. So if it comes out of your check automatically, so you see where it says not deducted from paycheck. So that means anything other than, so anything extra outside of work that does not come through your paycheck. So because I get health insurance through my job and I pay for that through my paycheck before the money hits my account, I'm not going to put anything there. And I'm not going to put anything on life insurance unless, you know, you have some outside. Let's say this person has a $10 payment for life insurance outside. And if you have any like medical, dental bills that you're paying on, you want to go ahead and put those payments here as well.
Jen, someone asked, would this section include co-pays or co-insurance?
So if it is not something that happens regularly, I would not put it here. So if you just recently went to the doctor and you got a $75 copay and you paid that, you know, you paid that off, I wouldn't put it here. Just because it's kind of those one-off situations. If it's something that you go to the doctor regularly and you usually have $25, you know, on a monthly basis coming out, then go ahead and put it there. All righty. So let's go down to household and personal. So this is a very important section because this is where a lot of folks underestimate how much money they spend. So let's talk about groceries. So when I think about grocery shopping and I think about millennials, I think about how a lot of millennials don't do it. And that's totally fine, right? If you order out a lot, we are so lucky to have things like DoorDash. And I'm going to be honest with y'all, even in finance, you know, I'm in finance and I still order out a lot, and I just don't like to cook. I don't have children, and you know, my husband is a personal trainer. He cooks his own food that's very nasty and gross because it's healthy. So I order my own food. So if you order out, I don't want you to put that here on the grocery section. We're going to put that in the dining out section. But for now, think about grocery store. Maybe you go to the grocery store, maybe you get, you know, personal care items. You can put that in this section, personal care, like deodorant, soap, and just estimate the numbers. This person, I'm going to say they go to the grocery store once every 2 weeks and they spend about $100 every time they go. So this person spends about $200 in groceries. That's kind of like a quick way to estimate. Think about how many times you go a month and then how much you usually spend. Like maybe it's around $60 or $100. Then we talk about personal care. So for my ladies, you know, thinking about hair, nails, you know, anything related to personal care, You want to think about how much you spend a month for that. Maybe you have large purchases. So I think about like myself. I love extensions. You know, extensions are very expensive, but I don't buy them every month. So I think about, okay, if I buy extensions twice a year and they last about 6 months, and let's say they cost $300 to $400 each time. So that's $800 that I'm spending a year. Add on, you know, anytime I go to the beauty salon, let's say that's another, you know, $100 because I go once a year. I mostly do my own hair, or let's say twice a year. So another $200. That's $1,000. Divide that by 12, and that'll give you what you spend monthly. But you want to include, you know, like the barber shop here. You want to include any type of personal care that you do. Put all of that here. Don't underestimate how much you spend in this category, because it's really important to know kind of how much you're spending. So let's say this person, let's say they spend $1,200 annually. So they spend about $100 a month. You know, shampoo and conditioner is very expensive. Okay. Very expensive. And then, you know, if you do any type of dry cleaning, have to pay for laundry, go ahead and put that there. Any professional dues. So if you belong to any professional, you know, networking groups or things like that, and you have to pay for those, go ahead and put that there. Cell phone. Let's say you spend about $100 a month on the cell phone. Make sure you're putting your real numbers and not the numbers that I'm estimating here. And then thinking about childcare, how much a month, right? So make sure that if you're thinking about weekly numbers, you multiply that times 4 to get your monthly amount. How much a month do you spend on childcare or education outside of student loans? So I'm gonna just pause there. Do we have any questions in the chat, Autumn, or are we still looking pretty good? You are on mute, but I'm thinking you're saying.
Oh, I said we're looking pretty good.
Okay, great. All right. So once you've got all that added up, for my folks who are doing this with pencil and paper and a calculator, you're going to want to add all of those categories up to get the amount of money that you spend on essential expenses. So for this person, it was $1,770. Let's go ahead and move over to the discretionary expenses. So outside of your cell phone, because we've already included that, if you have a landline like my mom still has, go ahead and add, you know, the landline in. Cable and internet, you'll want to go ahead and add that in as well. I ditched cable, yay, because I have Netflix, Hulu, all the other subscriptions, Disney Plus, all those other things. So I ditched my cable bill and then got 5 other bills. But that's okay. So you've got, you're going to want to put your internet here. If you have any of those subscriptions, you can actually enter in subscriptions down here. So you could add them all together, or you could separate them out. So you could do like Netflix, what is it now? Like $15. They keep going up. Hulu, you know, I don't like ads, so I got the premium for $12. And then anything else you want to add down there. When we think about dining out, let's take a step back and think about how many times we eat out a week. So for this person, right, this is not me. It probably is. But for this person, let's say they eat out 6 times a week. So I know it sounds crazy, but it happens. Okay, there's 3 meals a day, 6 times, you know, that's not that much. Okay, so let's say this person eats out 6 times a week, and they spend about $10 to $15 each time. So you're gonna want to multiply, you know, 6 times 15. So that's $90 a week, and then multiply that times 4 because there's 4 weeks. This person is spending $360 dining out. That number can be a little shocking. But like I said, you want to overestimate, not underestimate. And sometimes people spend, I've had people be like, whoa, that's a lot of eating out. But if you think about it, if prior to COVID locking us all up in the house, if you went out once or twice a week and you spent $30, that's $60 a week. So really think about what your personal numbers are, and make sure that you're multiplying that times 4 if you're thinking towards weekly numbers. Then you want to add any recreation club dues, any movies, sporting events, any hobbies that you do. So if this person plays tennis, maybe it's $30 a month for the club. And then vacation and travel. When we talk about vacation and travel, you want to think about how many times a year do you travel and how much do you spend each time. So this person, they take 2 large trips a year. If you think about, okay, plane tickets, $400 to $500, let's say $500. And then you're there for 4 days and you're spending about $100 a day between shopping and eating out for each meal. So, that's $400 more dollars. Let's just round up, say $1,000 per trip. And you take 2 large trips a year, that's going to be $2,000 a year. And then you'll want to divide that by 12. So although, we do it maybe once or twice a year, that money's got to come from somewhere. It's coming from your income. So we're going to factor that in as far as monthly. So this person is spending $166 on travel a month. And it's really crazy when you think about it that way, because you don't think, oh, I'm spending $200 a month on travel. But if you find yourself using credit cards, kind of wiping out your savings every time you go on a trip, this is where that money is going. You're just spending it all at once. And then lastly, gifts, contributions. So if you think about, if there's anything you give to nonprofits, church, charities, anything like that, you'll want to go ahead and include that on the monthly portion here.
Okay, we got a question about discretionary expenses.
Yes.
Would ordering online, YouTube subscriptions, kind of like extra buckets like that fall into that as well?
Yes. So I would go ahead and add those here in these blank spots. So if you're running out of spots, figure out how you can group some of these. So, maybe I have a lot, so I'm going to just put subscriptions here and then, add up what the monthly total is that I'm spending on all of my subscriptions. Something that I love to do is if I'm like, holy cow, how much money did I spend last month? I always use my debit card because it's a great way of tracking things. I will actually go through my banking app and look for any expenses out of the norm. So Amazon, right? A lot of us have been using Amazon a lot during COVID because, you can just order so many great things that you don't need. So you'll want to kind of figure out how much you're spending on those things. Maybe you just have a whole category for online shopping. And then you can kind of estimate how much you're spending. Now, it's important when you're doing this budget that you're not putting, what you wish you were spending or what you want to spend. I want the real numbers here, what you're actually spending, or like the estimate of what you're actually spending, not this ideal version of yourself where it's like, I only spend, $200 on online shopping, when in reality, you're spending $300 to $400. Be real with yourself. We can always change and adjust these numbers moving forward. And then lastly, you've got savings and investing. So here, for the purpose of this, let's just leave this blank at the moment, but we can always change this. The reason why I want to leave this blank is because sometimes we think we're saving, but we're really just moving money into our savings and then moving it back when we need it. Everybody doesn't do that. But I'll just talk about myself. I used to do that, right? I would feel so great. I'm like, I am saving, right? I'm going to move this money into my savings. I think I just took Autumn out with that one. I'm gonna move this money into my savings. I'm gonna feel great. And then by the end of the month, I moved all but $5 back over into my checking so that I can use that for my spending, right? So that's not really savings because it's not, you're saving it to spend it. Galen, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
Just laughing because it's so true.
Yeah.
Well, it used to be true. I'm better now.
We are all growing, and I think it's really important to point that out because so many of us grew up thinking like savings was moving money into your savings so that you could use it later that month. And I think once you start to see your numbers, you start to realize that that's not really actually saving, and I'm actually still just living paycheck to paycheck doing that. And if you ever want to get out of, living paycheck to paycheck, you have to start setting money aside that you're not going to touch, even if Amazon has a sale on something, or Fashion Nova or whatever your guilty pleasure is. Okay, so we got through that budgeting exercise. So once you're done with that, you should have a couple numbers. You should have a total for your discretionary expenses and a total for your essential expenses. And that should give you a total for your monthly expenses. Now, what I want you to do is think about your paychecks, right? You have a job, maybe you have multiple jobs. Think about how much actually hits your bank account after you've paid taxes, after all of those deductions come out. How much do you actually net, right? So let's just say this person nets about, let's say they net about $1,200 each check, and they get 2 checks a month. So we're going to put $2,400. So go ahead and put your own number there, what you net monthly. Once you have that there, you're going to be able to clearly see. For my folks who are doing this with pencil, paper, and a calculator, go ahead and subtract your total monthly expenses. So that's going to be your essential expenses and your discretionary added together. Go ahead and subtract that from your net monthly income. It may seem a little weird because some of these sections might say negative, right? This person has a deficit of $3 each month. And you're thinking, how does that happen, right? Well, we think about traveling. Maybe we spend a little less that day because we see our bank account get low. Or, maybe we cut something out, for a month or two. So we're still kind of living paycheck to paycheck, but we, in reality, once you look at our annual spending, we're still spending a little bit more. And that's how we start utilizing credit cards for normal expenses when we should just be using our debit card or cash. You start to live a little bit beyond your means. So the idea here is that once you know your budget number, we can start to back into these savings components once we start to limit this. So if I think, okay, I eat out so much and I also go to the grocery store, but I'm going to be realistic with myself. I know that I'm not going to cook a whole bunch of food if I go to the grocery store. So I'm not just going to cut out dining out completely because that's not realistic. It's unrealistic. I'm going to set myself up for failure, and then I'm going to be in the same place that I am. What I'm going to do is say, you know what? I'm going to limit my dining out to let's say $275 a month, right? So I'm backing into these numbers. So I know what I usually spend. $275 divided by 4 is $68. So I'm going to limit myself to $68 a week in eating out. I can eat whatever I want, but I'm not going to spend more than $68 for the whole week. That's a really easy way of backing into a budget so that you have more money, right? So once I click out of that, now I've got $82 here that I can put towards my emergency fund or towards my savings. Maybe if I, commit to eating out, I know that I'm not just gonna buy all this lettuce that's gonna go bad in the fridge. So I'm going to limit my groceries to $150, not $21.50, but $150. And now I've got $132. So just adjusting those two categories, now I've got $132 without changing my travel, without changing all of those other things that I have to pay. I can now save that or put it towards more of my debt. So this is one other thing that I wanted to add in here. We put our minimum payments for our credit cards over here. If you usually pay more than the minimum, go ahead and put that on this side. It's discretionary because you can choose to put more money there, and you should if you can, but it's also something we can back down as long as the minimum payments are being paid. So I'm gonna put credit card because I put an extra $50 towards all my credit cards a month. So now I'm back down to 82. So you kind of see how this works. Does anybody have any questions before we move on from this budgeting portion? Does anyone have any insights or anything that surprised them about their own budget? Of course, you don't have to, say the categories, or, you don't have to say the amounts, but I always think this is eye-opening for folks. Anyone want to share? You don't have to. I'm just providing the platform.
I'll share.
Sure.
Definitely very eye-opening. I think that when you put it down on paper, it helps you visualize and see how much money you're spending versus just saying like, okay, I know I have to pay rent, at the beginning of the month. I know I spend this much in groceries. Actually writing it down and getting a visual representation of where your money goes to really helps you be able to like, okay, so I spend $300 a week on food. Like I need to scale back a little bit. So I think this is awesome. I printed out like 5 or 6 of these because I'm about to get on it.
Yeah, no, and I encourage you, I encourage everyone, do this once every couple of months, right? I'm not somebody who, you see how I kind of backed into the dining out, transition. Instead of saying, okay, I'm only going to spend this for this, this, and this, and trying to change everything about my budget all at once, which is going to set me up for failure. I'm like, no, I'm just going to focus on 2 categories, 1 or 2 categories that I can control, and just bring those down $50, right? Just control it a little bit, and you'll start to see that surplus sitting in your bank account, and then we have something to work with. If you try and change everything, or you're really fixated on budgeting, keeping receipts, that can get very like overwhelming, and it'll actually have a negative impact on budgeting because you'll start to have this negative feeling about budgeting because it's like, oh my God, this is so much work. You don't want it to be too much work. Do this once, if nothing has changed in your budget drastically, do it once every 3 months. You don't have to do it every single day or every single week. Because it's not meant, your income isn't changing every month. Your expenses are essentially the same. Don't stress yourself out by doing this all the time, but every once in a while you need to know your number. So when I say know your number, that's what is your expenses? What do you have going out of the bank every month? All right. So now you know your budget. It's like, what do I do now, right? I don't want to spend this whole workshop just looking at our budget because now, maybe some of you do have a surplus in your budget, or maybe some of you are going to work on moving from the deficit to the budget. What do we do with the rest? So I'm going to go ahead and go back to the PowerPoint. So now that we've all done our budget, that was a long transition. Now that we've all done our budget, let's look at an example. So John's 22 years old. He's a recent graduate and he just got his first job. His starting salary is $35,000 a year, but after Missouri taxes, it's really $28,000, $562 a year, which is about $2,300 or $2,400 a month. He wants to move out with his, move out of his parents' house and get a new car, but he also wants to be financially secure. So a lot of us have, asked ourselves these questions, what can I afford? What makes sense? Can I move out of my parents' house? Should I stay with my parents? And the reality is it's all dependent on your income. So I want you all to write this down, the 60-20-20 rule. The 60-20-20 rule. I'm going to say it one more time because people remember things when you say it 3 times. The 60-20-20 rule. So the 60-20-20 rule is that you should be spending 60% of your income on essential expenses. So if you look at the budget sheet that we went over, it tells you exactly what your essential expenses are. 20% of your income should be going towards discretionary expenses. So like the Hulu, Netflix, travel, contributions, gift, charities. And then the other 20%, if you stick to those numbers, can go towards savings and investing. But if one of your categories is out of whack, what typically falls behind? Usually that 20% that should be going towards our savings and investings. And you know what that means? Those short-term goals are no longer short-term goals. They're midterm goals now. And your midterm goals, instead of maybe purchasing a home at 28, 29, or 30, you're purchasing that at 35 and 40, age 40. And it's really easy for us to get caught up in I'm young, I have time, but every single time that you're not saving, every single month that you're not saving, you're pushing those goals further and further back. They're not just going to fall out of the sky, right? I hope that we could all win the lottery, but it just doesn't happen. The only way you're going to get that, down payment for that house is to start immediately and to start saving. So again, we've already talked about the essential expenses. So John, based on his income of what we talked about, 60% of his income, his take-home pay of $2,380 is $1,428, $1,428. So if he goes out and gets a one-line apartment, luxury apartment that costs him $1,200 a month, and he only has $200 to pay for his car, insurance, and gas, that's not going to leave him in a very financially secure place. So you really want to back into the numbers of how much can you afford based off of that 60% of your income. So you find 60% by, I know we're all Kauffman Scholars, but I just like to say it, you multiply that 0.60 times whatever your net income is. And that will tell you how much total you should be spending on all of these categories. Then you think about discretionary expenses, that's 20%. For John, that's $476 a month. So if he's spending all of that money on dining out, he's not leaving any room for any of the other, travel, cable, internet. And then you might say, okay, that's 60-20. Where does the other 20 go? Well, if you're doing it right, it's going to go to building your financial security house. So this part of the presentation can get a little meaty. So please, please, please use that chat function to ask questions if you have them. Or, as long as you don't have a lot of background noise, feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question if you have a question. So if John is financially aware of his budget and he has the 20% left over to do savings and investings, he can start to work towards his short-term, midterm, and long-term goals. So once the budget is in line, now we've got some work. So when you're thinking about a house, feel free to draw this out. It should be pretty easy, just 3 squares, a larger square and a triangle. When you're building your financial security house, there is an order to how you want to do this. So I already put it up on the slide, but can anyone guess the number one reason people go into debt long-term and can't hit their goals? It's actually health bills. You'd be surprised. And the reason why is because no matter what, if you're sick or you need, your health is in question, you're going to liquidate your savings. You're going to do anything you can to feel better. And so we don't have to, you know, destroy all of our plans, you need to have health insurance. Maybe you got health insurance through your parents, right? If you're under 26, maybe you're still on your parents, that works. As long as you have health insurance, that is a key piece of your foundation when we talk about building your financial security, because it's the number one thing, whether it happens in your 20s, your 30s, or your 40s, it's the number one thing that throws people off of their financial security plan. They get large health bills and they have to pay them. They don't forgive those. So you want to make sure that you have health insurance, so you're only having to pay small premiums or small copays. The next thing you want to work on is your emergency fund. That's the second thing in your foundation to build your financial security. Your emergency fund is not your emergency Amazon fund. This is your emergency fund for when things when things pop up, things go crazy, things that you have to pay for, right? The first time I bought a car, I was like, oh, I'm so excited. And then bam, property taxes. And I'm like, why? Right? So these are the things that pop up that you're not planning for, but they're emergencies, not sales that pop up that you didn't plan for. So how much should you have in an emergency fund? 3 to 6 months of your essential expenses. So 3 to 6 months, what am I talking about? So go back to your budget sheet. How much do you spend on essential expenses a month? Right? Maybe it's $1,400. Just the essential, not the discretionary. Multiply that times 3, and that's how much you should have sitting in your savings. Sounds like a lot, I know. But that's why we're going to work on building it. And you have to save to do that. Another reason why you want to have 3 to 6 months is because if you lose your job, you want to be able to you don't want to have to go into debt. You don't want to have to get foreclosed on. You don't want to have to lose your place, right? You don't want to be secure, you should have at least 3 months in your savings. It's very hard to get to that spot. So for some folks, and that's okay, as long as you're putting a little bit of money towards it each month and you're not touching it, that's how you build build up to get to that 3 months. And max 6 months, right? We want to have 3 to 6 months of that cash in our savings if we can. The last piece of your foundation is saving for your short-term and midterm savings, or your short-term and midterm goals. So I'm building my emergency fund, but I'm also saving for a house, right? Maybe that's your next thing you want to buy. Those two things are not the same. So you need to have a savings for these short-term goals, like your car, buying a new car, a down payment on a home, maybe it's a vacation, whatever it is, that needs to be a separate savings from your emergency fund so that you have two different goals for that. You should not be saving for a short-term savings goal if you're not also saving for your emergency fund. If you can only choose one, like I said, there's an order. You need to start here. If you can do both, maybe you have $100 left over a month, go ahead and put $50 here and $50 here, right? It's okay to do two at the same time, but you need to at least be doing this one. If you have the full 20% left over, go ahead and put 10% towards building these things up, your foundation. Any questions on your foundation of your financial security house?
What was the first part to the financial security house? I didn't hear that part.
You said the first part, the first bucket here, health insurance?
Okay.
Yep. So you want to make sure you have health insurance is box number 1. That's the first thing you want to make sure you always have. If you don't have it through work or your parents, you need to look for it outside. They have a marketplace where you can actually look for health insurance. After you have health insurance, you need to be building up your emergency fund, and then you start focus on, or at the same time, focus on your short-term and midterm savings. So what comes after the foundation? The walls, right? Because nobody wants to work forever. And the only way you're not going to work forever is if you save for a time where you don't have to work. When I first, and I'm going to share a personal story. When I first started working my full-time job, someone came up to me and was like, well, not someone, but the HR person asked, hey, do you want to participate in this 401k? I'm like, what the heck is that? Why would I want to give my money away? No, I'm not doing it. That's crazy. I'm not doing it. Well, it was just because I was uneducated and I didn't understand what it was. A 401k, a 403b, a 457, all of these types of plans, right, are related to your job. They are retirement plans that your job offers. Again, I know it sounds boring to talk about retirement, but retirement is just, hey, I don't want to work every day. I think we can all agree that we don't want to work for the rest of our lives until we're 100 years old. So you need to think about this right now, because you're putting a small portion of your income away so that it can grow. It will be invested and it will grow to a larger amount of a larger bucket of money that you can pull from, so you don't have to get a paycheck from work and go to work. That's all retirement is. You're putting your money away, it's invested, it's growing to this huge pot of money. And then when you're ready to say, hey, I'm not clocking in anymore, you can start taking money out of that pot to supplement your income. So when we talk about work, you got the 401ks, 403bs, all those fours, they're all pretty much the same thing. It's just a bucket of money that you're putting away. The great thing about having a work sponsored plan or participating in that is that you can get a match. I'm telling you right now, if your job is offering you a match, so for example, it could say, if you put 3% of your income into this 401k, we will match you 3%. You should be putting in 3% so that you can get a 3% match. And let me tell you why. Everybody talks about investing, but you cannot get more than 100% return. And a match, a dollar for dollar match, is 100% return on your money. Someone's giving you free money. Take it. They're putting it into your bucket of money so that you can pull from it later. So participate in your IRA, in your 401k, get the match, do as much as you can, but try and do enough to get the full match. So if you put in, if they say up to 5%, go ahead and put in 5%. Now you're naturally saving 5% of your income out of that 20% that you should really be, striving to do. So you've got the match, and then on your own, you might hear people talk about these plans, IRAs, Roth IRAs. An IRA just stands for individual retirement account. That's it. Individual retirement account. It sounds real fancy when people say IRAs. Hey, I've got an IRA, but all it is an individual retirement account. It works very similar to a 401k. You save money into it on your own because you're not doing it through your job. You're doing it on your own. It's the same way as if you set up a savings account. You put the money into the IRA, it's invested, it grows, and then you can pull from that when you're ready to retire. So if your job doesn't offer a 401k, I would strongly recommend you look into opening up an individual retirement account, which is an IRA, and start to save for your future. So if you got your full 10% for your foundation, you've got your walls going down, you can put that other 10% there. Let's say you've got all of your goals, fully funded and you're ready to go. Well, I've got this extra 5% here because maybe, you're done with all of your emergency fund, you want to move up the ladder. This is when you start talking about the fun stuff. So I get people who ask me questions because I'm in finance all the time. Hey, I want to start a business, right? And I really want to get into real estate. And I'm like, do you have an emergency fund? They're like, well, no. I'm like, okay, are you at least saving for retirement through your job, your 9-to-5 job? Well, no. Okay, we need to start from the foundation first and then go to the walls. And that's not a dig on anyone who did it out of that order. Yes, it is totally possible to open up your own business and go into entrepreneurship. However, there is a extremely high statistic of businesses that fail in the first 5 years. And most of the time they're not failing because that person isn't skilled, because that person isn't great at what they do, because they didn't have a great idea. They're failing because of financial reasons, and not financial reasons from the business, their own personal financial reasons. So if you do it from the foundation first and then look at, real estate, business. I put Bitcoin because Bitcoin is speculative, right? These are all very risky investments in your house, in your roof. You want to start here and then move up. So just to, and my husband's coming home, so we're gonna have some dogs barking here, but I want to leave a little time for questions. I just want to give you this analogy. When we have tornadoes in the real world, right? Let's think about a financial tornado. When you have a tornado in the real world, what goes first? The roof, right? Your roof flies off. That's the first thing that goes. That's why so many businesses fail, because when a financial tornado comes, like losing your job, you get sick or you get hurt and you can't work, the first thing you have to get rid of is your real estate, your business. Uh-oh. I think somebody might have took over the screen. Let's see. There we go. The first thing you have to get rid of is your business. And then what do people go to? You hear people taking out of their retirement account. So now they have to push their retirement age back, right? That's because they're going to their walls. And then what they hope to have is their foundation, their emergency fund. But if you don't have that, now you're in financial ruin. Your financial security is shot, and you just, it's bad from there. So make sure to build your financial security from the foundation up. Before I can email out these helpful tips, I'm going to go back to, there we go. I'm going to email out these helpful tips because I want to leave some time for questions. What questions do you all have? How can I help? Was this helpful? I want to hear some feedback. So feel free to unmute yourself or put your questions in the chat.
Shannon Reed asked a question a while ago about when you're building the foundation and you're got these accounts, whether that's for short term and that's for your emergency funding. She mentioned, should those be separate accounts for each different savings that you have?
So here's the thing, you can have separate accounts, but I would definitely look into accounts that are free because, so for example, at Bank of America, you can have 2 savings accounts, but if you do, they're going to charge a fee in the second savings account. So if you do, if you want to use one account because it's going to save you money, go ahead and do that, but keep an eye on what the total goal is for both. Okay. I recommend having 2 just so you're not mixing the dollars together and then, all of a sudden your emergency fund has been liquidated for your short-term goal because you're like, oh, I reached my goal, but really, you were only halfway at your goal because you needed to divide that number by 2. So I do recommend having 2 separate accounts, Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, a lot of these like apps that we use, they have free savings accounts that you can also use. So maybe you use a separate one for your short-term goals. What else?
We got a lot of great, this is great, thank you, definitely helpful. Will you be emailing this presentation out? So someone asked that question.
Yes, I will send it to Autumn, and then Autumn can send it to everyone because I'm sure she has all of your emails.
They love the 60-20-20.
I have a question. It's regarding like the IRA or like the savings, retirement savings, whatever. So basically, so I'm a teacher, and so like I'm already enrolled into like the school district's retirement system or program.
Mm-hmm.
However, I have the option to enroll in a 403B with my school. Should I do that to the 403B, or should I just rock with the school system savings that I'm automatically required to be in?
So, and my speaker's a little shot, so I don't know how that happened, but I think what you asked was that you have, through your school, you have a pension, right? That pension plan that they naturally take money out of and put money into. And should you participate in the 403B, which is separate? Yes. And the reason why I say yes is because, one, saving money is always good. So saving more is better. Two, you do not have access to that pension at all, right? That pension is something that all employees, all of the employees that are like you, teachers, principals, employees that participate in that pension, that money goes into a pot. You don't have a choice into it. They do it automatically. It goes in there. And, when you retire, you can have access to that pension. They will pay you out, a lifetime income from that. If you have a 403B separate, if you move jobs, or let's say you no longer are working for the school district, you can actually roll the money in your 403B. You can move it to your new plan, your employer plan. So you'll still have the pension, but the 403B money, you can actually move into another plan and you have more options, right? You can actually, and this isn't always, something that I promote, but you can take loans from it if you get into a financial hardship. You can't do that from a pension. So again, it's just more money that you can save. It's more, you have more options. You can take that money with you and roll it into your new plan. You can roll that money into an individual retirement account if you need to, and you'll just have more options with it. So I recommend doing both if you can.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Someone else asked a question: how should this be modified for a spending plan rather than a budget?
So although it says budget on there, this is essentially a spending plan, because we didn't set categories of like, oh, I want you to spend this much in this category, right? That's kind of like a budget. Okay, I'm going to spend $50 here, $50 here, $50 here. These idealistic numbers that really don't apply to you and probably won't make sense for whatever your budget is. A spending plan really should be based off of your real income and how much money you have left over. So this is technically a spending plan because we're going off of actually what you spend, and then you can modify your spending in those categories to reach a budget for that category. So this is kind of a spending plan, even though it has the word budget on it, because it's only based off of what you spend. If you need to modify what you spend, you have to pick which categories. Everybody's going to be different, right? I can give up getting my nails done. I did, right? But I'm not going to give up eating out because I hate cooking. And that's okay. Everybody doesn't have to give up the same thing. I really hate cookie cutter budgets because everyone has something different. I don't have a child. If I had a child, I probably couldn't eat out as much as I do. And so you really have to focus on what you personally spend and what you can personally give up that's realistic.
I just want to say that it's a little past 6, and so if you guys have to leave off of the webinar, we completely understand. We thank you for joining us this far. We're still going to leave just a little bit more time for any more questions that someone has, and then we'll just wrap up with some quick information about a few events that are up and coming that we would love for you to check us out on.
Perfect. So any other questions? And it can be about anything in the PowerPoint or in the presentation. All right, well, it sounds like we don't have any other questions. So I just wanted to say thank you all so much for joining. Again, I know you could be anywhere right now, be doing anything on a Wednesday at 5 o'clock, but you're here talking about your finances. Autumn, please feel free to provide my contact information to anyone who reaches out to you. I'm happy to help. I'm more about financial education. I don't charge anything. If you have questions, please reach out to me. I want to be that ear for you and that person that you feel confident and comfortable with talking about things to. There's so many other workshops we could do related to finances. This is just a very basic one. So if you need additional help or resources, please let me know and I'm happy to do that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I am going to share my screen with you guys. I just wanted to put a few things in front of you before we get off of the webinar. So, of course, we are going to send out the presentation, and we'll send out Jennifer's contact information should you guys want to follow up with her. And I thank you so much for being open to that. That's really nice. As far as the events we have coming up, there is an event happening on September 3rd at 5:30. It's going to be a partnership between Kauffman Scholars and the KU Edwards campus on race in the workplace. As we know, racial injustice, racial tensions has been, I think, at an ultimate high in our generation this summer, and they're going to be tackling what that translates into the workplace. So if you're interested in that, please sign up for that. I'll send out more information. I'll send the link, so if you want to RSVP to that, you can. It's completely free. And then in a couple of weeks, we're going to send out a link for our very first info session on the Kauffman Scholars Alumni Leadership Council. So Jennifer and myself used to be on the council, and we are recruiting for next year. And the council really spearheads a lot of the engagement that we put on for alumni from Kauffman Scholars. So if you're interested in learning more how to be a part of that, know that that's coming up, so you can join us on that as well. And I'll send out this flyer too, so you can have more like a physical copy. Okay. Does anybody have any questions